5 people got into a submarine called Titan on June 18, 2023, and dove into the water. They were going to see where the Titanic sank, the same Titanic ship that went down in the ocean around 100 years ago. This is the worst kind of advantage of tourism, and it costs a lot of money. For a few hours on this trip, each person in the submarine had spent more than $20 million. The Titanic wreck is deep in the water, so this trip costs a lot. 3.810 meters below the surface of the water, to be exact. The trip of this submarine began below the surface of the water. To get to a depth of 3,110 meters takes about 2 hours. This submarine sends a message to the Polar Prince, a support ship on the surface of the water, every 15 minutes. For them, this was the only way to talk to everyone else. That June 18th, it had only been 1 hour and 45 minutes since this submarine went under the water. It lost touch with the backup ship at sea all of a sudden. At 4:30 p.m., the submarine should have been back on the surface after its tour. It's not there. At 7:10 p.m., the crew of Polar Prince chose to call the U.S. Coast Guard. This started a 4-day multinational search and a large-scale search and rescue operation to find the submarine. Ships, planes, and robot cars were also used. There was only one question on everyone's mind. What happened to these people? The mystery submarine went missing in the Atlantic Ocean near Canada. If you look at a map, this spot is 600 kilometers from the Canadian island of Newfoundland. In the water there, you can see the broken-up remains of the Titanic, with the bow and stern lying about 800 meters apart. It wasn't a submarine that went missing here, it was a submersible. These are two words that mean pretty much the same thing. I've been using the word submarine to keep things simple up until now. These two words are not the same, though. U-boats have their own power. Through a port they can go into and out of the water on their own. That's not possible with submersibles, though. To send a submarine into the water and have it come back. There is a ship on the water's surface that controls everything. This helper ship was the polar ship in our case. Oceangate, whose CEO was Stockton Rush, was in charge of the whole thing. Don't forget their name, because he's important to the story. He had worked as an aircraft engineer for a living. He began the Oceangate Company in 2009, a private company whose job it was to take wealthy people on vacations to the deep sea. Titanic trips were first offered by the company in July 2021. Before this, they had tours of other places and shipwrecks. Some of their past trips, like the one to the Azores and the Bahamas, can still be seen on their website. The Titan was not the only submarine that this company made. Atlantic F Gate also had 2 other submersibles called Antipodes and Cyclops. Antipods could live up to 304 meters deep, and Cyclops could live up to 500 meters deep. Titan, on the other hand, was made to go 4,000 meters deep, 4 kilometers below the surface. That's why this was the only submarine that could reach the Titanic. Look at this map made by the Washington Post to get a sense of how deep 3,800 meters is. Here, the sizes are given in feet. In general, men are 6 feet tall. What happened when the iceberg hit the Titanic was 100 feet above the water and many times that deep. Recreational scuba dives can only go as deep as 130 feet with their tanks. Only a little light can reach the bottom of the sea after 650 feet. This is called the twilight zone. The deepest underwater rescue effort that has ever been done was 1,600 feet deep. Giant squids can swim at depths of 2,600 feet. These huge squids are so scary that they look like they came from another world. Take a look at these pics. After 3,800 feet, there is a midnight zone. There is no sunlight below this point. After this, everything is black. There are about 4 degrees of water here. From here you can go down another 5,000 feet, then 6,000 feet, then 8,000 feet, then 10,000 feet, and finally 12,500 feet. This is the ocean floor where the Titanic wreck is. It's almost 400 times stronger down here than it is on the top. So any submarine that goes this deep should have a very well thought out design. The windows, which are pieces of glass that let you see outside, could only be this big. The Titan Submersible's window, which is called a viewport, was the largest viewport ever put in a private submarine. The Titan submarine wasn't very big. It could only fit 5 people at a time. The shell, which is the main part of it, was made of carbon fiber. In the end, 2 titanium caps were connected, and the whole thing was about 6.7 meters long. It was over 10,400 kilos heavy. You can see that it was built with 4 electric jets on the outside. There were 2 horizontal and 2 vertical controls that could be used to move it. One interesting thing to note is that this sub was managed by a game controller. This sub was run by a programmer for a video game. It's not as strange as it sounds. The U.S. Navy handles their submarines and the periscopes, which are the ports that let them see outside, with Xbox. However, the whole Titan submarine was being controlled with a video game controller. In other words, the person controlling the submarine under the water was also using this game controller. There are no seats inside, but there is a small toilet next to the viewport. There was no barrier between the toilet and the people who needed to use it, so they said that if someone had to use the toilet, everyone else would have to face the other way and keep watching TV. The GPS doesn't work here because these submersibles go so deep. A text messaging method was used to keep in touch with their support ship. It's not clear what kind of internet service the ship had. OceanGate had said in this tweet from a while ago that they were talking about Starlink's satellite internet service. If we go back to the story from June 18th, there were 5 people on board this submarine that day. The first was Hamish Harding, a 58-year-old British surfer. He liked to go on adventures and was a 3-time winner of a Guinness World Record. In 2016, he went to the South Pole with Buzz Aldrin. He once did a 4-hour dive into the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest part of the ocean. He also took part in a Blue Origin suborbital flight last year, which was set up by Jeff Bezos's space exploration business. Jean-Paul Henri Nargeolet, who is 77 years old, was the second traveler. Who used to be in charge of the French Navy. 37 times he had been to the Titanic wreck. He was in charge of studies going on underwater on the RMS Titanic. On the 3rd and 4th seats were Shahzada Dawood, a British-Pakistani investor, and his 19-year-old son, Suleiman. One of the largest businesses in Pakistan was owned by him. Someone told Suleiman's aunt that he was scared to go, but he wanted his father to make him happy and be with him on the trip. As I told you that day, the submarine was talking to the support ship every 15 minutes. The last word was said at 11:15 a.m. After that, there was no more signal or contact. Even so, the Titan was supposed to resurface at 4:30 p.m., as planned, because there was a way for passengers to tilt it from inside and push it back and forth to bring it back if it got stuck in the water. Taking out the ballasts is how this is done. To keep ships and subs stable, ballasts are very important parts. They're just big, strong people. Submarines can go under the water with their help. Stones and buckets were used as ballasts in the past. But now subs use water to keep them steady. Subs take on more weight when their ballast tanks are full of water. This makes the subs sink into the water. When the Titan did not come back to the surface at 4:30 p.m., the people on the support ship waited for a while before calling the U.S. Coast Guard at 7:10 p.m. The big race, the race against time, began after this, for 96 hours. So if they had to do a rescue operation, they only had 4 days to find the passengers still alive. Ships usually have something called an EPIRB, which stands for Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon. Because of this, these ships can be found. It wasn't put in Titan, though. Another problem was that people on board the Titan would have died of a lack of air, even if it had sunk back to the bottom of the ocean. Because this submarine couldn't be opened from the inside, this submersible's door could be locked and unlocked from the outside. Those 4 days were very important, whether the submarine was in the water or on the surface. 17 bolts are used by the crew to close the hatch from the outside. There's no other way out. Besides that, the search area was about 25,000 kilometers. Think about how hard it would be to find a van-sized submarine in that big of an area. They still put their lives at risk to help people, though. At first, this operation was started by 2 American and 2 Canadian planes. They used sonar so that they could pick up messages even from underwater. In the beginning, 3 ships searched from the surface. As time went on, more ships joined the search. We also used some cars that could be controlled from afar. They're kind of like robot cars in that no one sits inside, but they can drive into the water and find things. They are directed from the water's surface. Titan was being looked for by 3 ROVs. On the 3rd day of the search, after 3 days of work, a sonar from a Canadian plane picked up sounds of hitting. Sounds, like someone knocking on the door, were heard every half hour. After a while, the U.S. Coast Guard heard the sounds too. Finally, on June 22nd, a ROV searching the ocean floor came across some trash, a little more than 490 meters from the bow of the Titanic. The submarine had broken apart, which was proven when the pieces were seen. The people who were inside had died. 5 more pieces of trash were found after more digging. It was the same day that the U.S. Coast Guard told the press that the banging sounds they heard were not related to this Titan submarine. In fact, it was found that Titan exploded because of high pressure. You might be thinking that implode means burst. In fact, the opposite of an explosion. When something breaks out or comes to the surface like a bomb going off, we say explosion. The force spreads out. A detonation, on the other hand, moves the force inside, being squished together and breaking apart. That's what collapse is. And catastrophic implosion means that the implosion happened so quickly that it destroyed the whole building in less than an instant. This means that the people who were sitting in it died right away, but they didn't feel it. What caused this collapse is what this question is about. I was right when I said that the Titan's main body was made of carbon fiber. Most subs and submersibles are made of steel, titanium, or aluminum, though. Carbon fiber designs like Titan's were tests of new ideas. Carbon fiber qualities had never been checked out at such great depths in the ocean. Based on what happened, we can say that carbon fiber is not a good material for this job. As underwater explorer Robert Ballard put it, the person who found the Titanic's wreck in 1985, he said that to get to the bottom of the ocean, they have done thousands of dives in different kinds of boats. They've never lost a car, though. This was the first time a submarine or other craft fell apart in this way. He was very critical of Titan, saying that safety rules were not being followed. You will hear the same thing over and over again in OceanGate Company's CEO's old talks. The CEO talked about OceanGate in a long article that came out in 2019 in the Estonian magazine Smitwas. He said that the U.S. Passenger Vessel Safety Act of 1993 puts the safety of passengers ahead of new business ideas without a good reason. He didn't see the point in doing this and didn't think safety was very important. He said in another talk last year that safety is pointless after a while. Nothing should be done if you want to stay safe. Don't get out of bed, drive, or do anything else. He then says, I broke some rules to make Titan. It said in the rule that carbon fiber and titanium should not be used. He knew it was wrong to use them, but he did it anyway. Stockton Rush was aware that the experiment he was doing had the potential to be very harmful. Stockton Rush's name has now been added to this list. This is a list of scientists whose work killed them. If you learned something from this movie, please like it and subscribe.